Am I the a-hole for emailing my boss and giving her an ultimatum? Original post. So, backstory. I, 36 female, work in a medical office doing insurance, intake, and acting as the receptionist. Our practice is big enough that there are supposed to be 3 people doing my job, but the head receptionist quit and they refused to hire anyone else. So I've been doing it all for about 4 to 5 months now. They finally brought someone in to train, but sadly it was for another location. Let's call her Julie. We got to talking, and she's 19 and has only worked as a seasonal cashier at Target. Somehow we got on the subject of pay, which you're supposedly never supposed to do, but she was talking about what she made at Target, and then what she would be starting at in my job. Julie was making more than me. My mind was blown. I have more years of experience than this girl has fingers, plus I've been doing the work of multiple people for months, without getting paid more or even receiving a thank you from higher-ups. Yes, I understand I should have controlled my rage a little better, but the build-up from months of this finally just popped. I emailed my head boss and told her that I've been working for months doing multiple jobs, only to have someone with far less experience hired, making more than me while doing less work. I told her I wanted a pay raise, or I would be resigning. Am I the a-hole for demanding a pay raise? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. Obviously, you shouldn't even have to ask for a raise, but welcome to capitalism, I guess. Also, this part, we got on the subject of pay, which you should never do. You should always, always, always be happy to talk pay with your coworkers. The idea that it's unacceptable is how places get away with this kind of BS in the first place. Not the a-hole. You're definitely not the jerk here. It's honestly insulting to do the work of 3 people for months, only to find out a trainee with 0 experience is starting higher than you. Businesses will exploit loyalty as long as you let them, but they clearly have the budget if they're hiring new people at that rate. Standing up for your worth after being overworked and underpaid isn't rage. It's a necessary reality check for your boss. If they value the practice, they'll pay up to keep the person actually running it. You're not the a-hole, but you may have been foolish in how you went about this, emailing out of the blue rather than requesting a sober sit-down meeting where you make the case and provide data about how underpaid you are. It sounds like you've been taken advantage of, and I can see why, with you repeating that exploitative, got on the subject of pay which you should never do nonsense, and you're going to be lucky to get properly compensated by this place. If you're being taken advantage of, the solution is to leave, not negotiate a situation where they take advantage of you less. OP may have been foolish, generally speaking, but in this situation, I don't think it was really out of line. There's 0 reason you can't discuss pay. Employers just don't like employees discussing pay for this exact reason. Employees should 100% talk about pay with each other, power in numbers. There's absolutely nothing illegal about discussing pay. It's usually just discouraged, or they'll say something like don't discuss pay in a handbook. If they were to fire you or Julie over discussing pay, that's discrimination, and you and her could fight that. Now for the update. Thank you to everyone who commented, because this has been weighing heavily on my shoulders. I have a few updates for you. This happened a little over 2 weeks ago. First, my boss called me the next day, saying it was unprofessional for coworkers to talk about their pay and that we should be working instead of slacking off. Also, because of my experience and what I have done for the company, she increased my pay to what Julie was making, and they hired a new employee for my location starting the following week. I told her that was agreeable. Second, I have an interview at a hospital next week, making more than I am now, with better benefits. Third, somehow, my email or my being upset spread throughout the company, including other locations. I don't know if Julie said something when she went to her location, or if the higher-up I emailed did. Occasionally, I have to call other offices about patients or get help with things. Whenever I did, I was questioned about it, laughed at for doing something so bold, or I noticed my work emails would be left on read and I was constantly left on hold. My head manager completely stopped talking to me and answering my calls, even when I sent her urgent texts. Fourth, I resigned. I have enough saved up to last me until I can find another job. F them. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not getting my nephew an internship interview after getting them for most of the others? I work for a large organization that regularly brings on interns, and over the years I've helped most, though not all, of my nieces and nephews get interviews. To be clear, I don't hand anyone a job. All I ever do is make sure their resume ends up in the interview pile. After that, they're evaluated like everyone else. My name might open a door, but it absolutely won't carry someone through it. My nephew Eric is graduating this year. A few weeks ago, his mom, my sister-in-law, asked me whether I could help him get an internship. I told her the same thing I always say. Eric needed to reach out to me himself. I wasn't going to chase him or advocate for someone who couldn't be bothered to show initiative. When he finally did contact me, it was painfully obvious that he was only doing it because his mom told him to. He didn't seem particularly interested, curious, or motivated. On top of that, the way he communicates is rough. Everything is bruh, fam, and TikTok slang. I'm not trying to be a language snob, but he struggled to speak clearly or professionally, and he couldn't articulate why he even wanted the internship in the first place. I told him that if he was serious, I needed him to show me. I asked him to write a short note explaining why he wanted the internship and what he hoped to gain from the experience. I honestly didn't expect him to follow through at all, so I was surprised when he sent something. Unfortunately, the note was very clearly generated. It was vague, full of buzzwords, and completely disconnected from anything personal or specific. I told him I couldn't put in a good word for him if he couldn't do even the bare minimum himself. That's when everything blew up. He had a full meltdown, accusing me of being unfair and out of touch. He said no one actually writes things like that anymore, and that everyone uses AI now. His mom backed him up, saying I was being harsh and unrealistic. I explained that I wasn't willing to risk my own professional reputation. If I recommend someone, it reflects on me. I asked Eric point blank why he wanted the internship. His answer was, I don't know. My brother stepped in and argued that Eric struggled during the pandemic, that academics and expectations have changed, and that he just needs someone to give him a chance. He also reminded me that years ago, someone gave me a chance, despite the fact that I wasn't a straight A student, which is true. Part of me wonders if I should get Eric an interview anyway, just so he can see firsthand how unprepared he is. But that also feels mean and unnecessary. So now I'm stuck wondering, am I wrong for refusing to help him get an interview? Or is this genuinely how kids are these days, and I'm just out of touch? Not the a-hole. You are giving him a chance to show what he can do. The problem is that he's not willing to do what it takes to take advantage of that chance. I am curious, how much older is the last niece or nephew that you helped? She graduated 2 years ago, and she did get one of the internship spots. So he really can't blame it on how it is these days, because she's only 2 years older and she had the necessary skills. Honestly, it's a stupid excuse no matter what, but this just makes him look even worse. My brother made the case that my nephew had struggled during the pandemic. The academic landscape has changed, and he needs someone to give him a chance to show what he can do. You just gave him that chance. He did not rise to the occasion. Right, OP didn't say no. OP asked him to write a cover letter, which is the bare minimum, and he didn't even do that. Not the a-hole. You gave multiple chances. He had a chance when he contacted you, when you asked him to write a note, when you asked him again to his face why he wanted the internship. What does he think the interview would consist of? If he's genuinely not capable of answering these kinds of questions and presenting himself in a professional way, then he's not remotely going to be able to pass an interview with your company. Recommending him for one would reflect poorly on you. If he is capable of pulling off an interview, but is stubbornly refusing to show you that despite explicitly being asked for it, then he's jerking around the person he's asking for help. In that case, he might be able to pass the interview, but he wouldn't deserve to, and his entitled attitude would probably still reflect poorly on you. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not forcing my son to keep helping my daughter's friend after she rejected him? I'm a dad of 2 kids in the Midwest. My son John, 17 male, and my daughter Britt, 17 female, are both in high school. Britt has a close friend, Melissa. For the past several months, John had been helping Melissa with things due to her mom working crazy days and hours. She's a nurse. John helps with rides to work and to a college prep class they are taking together. John and Melissa work at the same place on the same schedule 3 days a week, and we live in a small town with no public transportation. They're both in a dual enrollment program that lets high school students take college-level courses. Passing these classes is basically required to enter the program they're pursuing. John was both her ride to and from places and her study partner. John is academically inclined, must get that from his mother LOL. John developed feelings for Melissa and eventually asked her out. She politely declined and said she wanted to focus on her education, but wanted to remain friendly. I think that's completely fair, and she handled it the best anyone could ask. After being turned down, John decided to stop giving Melissa rides and told me and his sister that he didn't want her coming over anymore because he needed space to get over his feelings. I initially told him that was unreasonable and that rejection is part of life and that he needed to be mature and handle it better. Sure, it's not easy, but he was too smart not to know what the outcome could be if she turned him down. We talked it through more calmly later, and honestly, I was impressed with how he reflected on it. He realized he was acting emotionally, apologized to his sister, and explained that continuing to be around Melissa was making it harder for him to move on. He wasn't rude to her, didn't lash out, and didn't blame her. He just set boundaries, which I thought was healthy and the mature thing to do. The problem is that Melissa now doesn't have a ride to work or to the prep class, and she's at risk of being dropped from the program and possibly losing her job. I think she's missed a fair amount of work. As for the class, John claims that she would probably be dropped if she misses 2 more classes. Britt is furious. She says John is being spiteful and punishing Melissa for rejecting him. I told Britt she needed to stop and leave it alone. I explained that Melissa doesn't owe John a relationship, but John also doesn't owe Melissa continued friendship, rides, or any kind of labor. I also told her that blaming John for consequences he didn't cause on purpose was immature and unfair. Britt refused to drop it and started an argument where she said some things that were out of line toward her brother. At that point, I grounded her, and although we've had some talks, I don't think we've made much progress. I have not told John to resume helping Melissa, nor do I intend to. I don't think forcing him to ignore his feelings to fix someone else's situation is fair, but I do feel bad. Melissa's mom struggles enough due to being a single mother, and Melissa losing her job and being dropped from the program seems like a lot for 2 people already struggling. So, am I the a-hole for not making my son continue helping my daughter's friend? Can Britt drive her? Can she ask other classmates? How long does John not want to be around her? Especially since he is still around her since they have class together and work together. Melissa should be working on a solution to her transportation issues. Britt can't. She works and plays sports. John hasn't said when he wants to be around, just that he wants space. No a-holes here. It sucks for Melissa. But why is it everyone else's responsibility to get her to work, classes, and so on? Was there never a plan B? What if your son had been ill? She would Uber sometimes from what I understand, but that's not an option anymore due to cost. Yes, but there must have been some plan besides your kids. This is where I struggle to understand. I may rely on someone giving me the convenience of a ride, but I can't expect this person to be my personal taxi. What would the plan be if your son traveled or something else changed? What about a bike or scooter for her? But still, this is none of your issues, even if the situation sucks. I assume the plan was her dad. Her dad moved several states away over the summer. She's not my child, so I don't have that information to be honest. I would hope she had a plan before signing up. Last story. Am I the a-hole because a child was injured on my property and I don't think it's a big deal? My son had a friend come over, and they were goofing around in the yard. There's a small dead tree I've been meaning to cut down but haven't gotten to yet because I'm lazy. My son never had any interest in helping me with the tree. Every time I suggested he come help me, he was tired or busy from or with all the many responsibilities teenagers have. Since his friend was there and he wanted his friend to think he was cool, he somehow found the energy. He went and got the axe from the shed and started to chop down the tree. His friend thought this was very cool and asked to try. My son gave him the axe, and he swung it at the worst possible angle. The axe hit the tree and bounced off, lost a little momentum, and hit him on the chin with the flat side of the axe. The boys ran inside. The axe didn't break the skin, and I told him he was fine, but he could put some ice on it if he wanted. Since it's so cold, he did not want to. When his dad picked him up, he was furious. He asked why I didn't call. I didn't think it was a big deal. Also, his son has a phone. He could have called. I said next time I'll call. He said there won't be a next time, and he's going to look my ex-wife up and tell her about this. I understand that times change, and what once was acceptable isn't necessarily still acceptable. I get that. He didn't even bleed. Is this really a big enough deal to throw an adult tantrum over? If he was seriously hurt, I would have taken him to the hospital. He learned not to take axes from sheds without the permission of their owners, and I would say he got a deal on that lesson. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This is the kind of thing teenagers do. One of my friends came home to her son and his friends trying to cut a tree down in their yard. Her son had borrowed the car without permission, had an accident, and decided to try to cover it up by claiming a tree fell on it. That's actually really funny. They should have said a deer did it. I blame deer for everything. Except he would have had to own that he borrowed the car without permission. He will never live that story down. I have a feeling that when he has children, his parents are going to tell them that story frequently. Reddit infantilizing teenagers again. Mostly because the majority of y'all are teens, wanting to avoid taking any sort of responsibility LMAO. I hit myself with an axe when I was 13. My cousin was chopping wood and had me help. He told me to hold the wood while I hit it, and I was scared, so I used less force. The axe bounced off the wood and hit my knuckle. I'm glad it hit the knuckle because of the bone, so it wasn't a deep cut. The axe had been sharpened right before I used it too, so the cut was at least very clean. I just washed my hand under the sink, used a bandage, and had zero pain. It was great. Not the a-hole. Now this kid has one mildly interesting story to tell about his childhood, probably the only one he's ever going to get. You're obligated to talk to your ex-wife about things pertaining to your son only. Cut her off if she tries to bring up anything about this kid and his ridiculous father. My ex-wife and I are actually fine. She has no interest in talking to me, and if she ever does call, it's usually to ask a legitimate question or to tell me something she sincerely thinks is important. We spoke maybe 5 times last year, for maybe 10 to 20 minutes each. Completely civil. They have their summers together and I never ask her what they do, nor does she volunteer that information. Likewise, if she has a question about what our kid has been up to, she asks him.